If your hair has been thinning, shedding, or just refusing to grow, no matter what expensive product you try, there's a very old remedy making a big comeback for one reason. It actually supports the scalp where hair growth begins. And the surprising part is this. One of the most effective combinations may already be sitting in your kitchen and your natural oil shelf. I'm talking about fermented rice, water, and rosemary oil. Now, before you think this is just another social media beauty trend, stay with me because this combination is not magic and it's not hype when you understand what it may be doing underneath the surface of the scalp. Hair doesn't grow because you wish it to grow. Hair grows when the follicle is supported. Circulation is improved, inflammation is lowered, and the scalp environment becomes healthy enough for the follicle to stay active. That's where this ancient pairing gets very interesting. Let's start with the real issue. Most people focus only on the hair strand. They look at dryness, split ends, breakage, or frizz. But hair is dead protein once it leaves the scalp. The real action happens below the skin, inside the follicle. If the follicle is stressed, inflamed, undernourished, or poorly supplied with blood flow, your hair can become thinner, weaker, slower to grow, and more likely to shed. And here's what many people miss. A tired scalp often gives warning signs long before obvious hair loss shows up. You may notice itching, buildup, oily roots with dry ends, flakes, sensitivity, or hair that just doesn't seem as dense as it used to be. These are clues that your scalp environment is out of balance. This is why fermented rice water has become so popular again. It's not new at all. Women in several Asian traditions have used rice water for generations to support long, healthy-looking hair. But fermentation changes everything. Plain rice water has some benefits, but fermented rice water becomes more active because the soaking process breaks things down and creates a more scalp-friendly liquid rich in compounds that may help condition the hair and support the surface of the scalp. One of the key reasons fermented rice water gets attention is because it contains amino acids. Hair is primarily made of keratin, which is a protein. Amino acids are the building blocks of protein. When you apply fermented rice water, you're not growing hair overnight, but you may be helping coat and strengthen the hair shaft while also creating a healthier scalp environment. It also contains inositol, a carbohydrate compound often talked about in traditional hair care circles because it may help improve the feel, resilience, and smoothness of hair. This can make hair look fuller and less fragile, which is important because a lot of people confuse breakage with hair loss. Sometimes the problem is not that the follicle has stopped working completely. Sometimes the hair is simply becoming weak and snapping off faster than it can grow. But fermented rice water alone is not the whole story. This is where rosemary oil comes in, and this is the part that makes this combination especially powerful. Rosemary oil is known for one major reason. It may help support circulation in the scalp. And that matters because your hair follicles depend on oxygen and nutrients delivered through blood flow. If circulation is poor, the follicle may become sluggish. A sluggish follicle can mean slower growth, thinner strands, and more resting hairs instead of active growing. hairs. Think of your scalp like soil. If the soil is dry, compacted, inflamed, and poorly nourished, the roots won't thrive. But if the soil is healthy, balanced, and well supplied, growth becomes much more possible. Rosemary oil may help create that more supportive environment. It's also valued because it may help calm one of the biggest enemies of healthy hair growth, chronic scalp inflammation. Even low-grade inflammation can interfere with follicle performance. You may not always see it dramatically. Sometimes it shows up as tenderness, irritation, excess oil, flaking, or just a scalp that never feels truly healthy. When the scalp is irritated over and over, follicles don't perform at their best. And there's another important angle here. Many people dealing with hair thinning are also dealing with stress. Stress affects hormones, circulation, sleep, and inflammation. All of those can influence hair. Rosemary has a long history of use in wellness and scalp care, partly because of its stimulating, refreshing effect. So you're not just applying an oil, you're potentially helping wake up a stagnant scalp. Now here's where fermented rice water and rosemary oil become more interesting together than apart. Fermented rice water can help nourish, soften, and condition while supporting the outer environment of the scalp and hair shaft. Rosemary oil may help stimulate and energize the scalp by improving circulation and reducing stress-related stagnation. One helps create a healthier surface environment, and the other may help encourage activity underneath. That's why this pairing is often described as follicle awakening. Now let's be clear. Awakening doesn't mean you rub this on your scalp once and suddenly baby hairs explode overnight. Hair growth is slow. Follicles operate in cycles. Some hairs are growing, some are resting, and some are shedding. What you're trying to do is improve the conditions so more follicles can stay in or return to a healthier growth phase over time. And this is exactly where most people fail. They use something natural for 4 days, don't see dramatic results, and quit. But hair biology doesn't work on social media timelines. If your follicles have been under stress for months or years, you need consistency, not miracles. So let's talk about how to use this properly, because technique matters. First, fermented rice water should not be over fermented. That's a big mistake. If it smells extremely sour or harsh, it may be too strong for your scalp and can actually irritate sensitive skin. You want it mildly fermented, not aggressively acidic. The goal is support, not scalp stress. To make it, rinse your rice first to remove dirt and excess starch. Then soak clean rice in water for about 24 to 48 hours at room temperature. Once it has lightly fermented, strain the liquid and refrigerate it. That's your base. Now, rosemary oil should never be dumped directly onto the scalp in a strong, undiluted form. Essential oils are potent. Too much can irritate the skin, trigger redness, and actually worsen shedding in sensitive people. So what you want to do is dilute rosemary essential oil in a carrier oil such as coconut oil, jojoba oil, castor oil, or even olive oil if that's what you have. A very simple approach is to use a few drops of rosemary oil in 1 tablespoon of carrier oil. That's enough. more is not better. In natural scalp care, too much stimulation can backfire. Here's a practical routine that works well for many people. Start by parting your hair and lightly applying the diluted rosemary oil to the scalp, not the entire hair length. Focus on thinning areas, edges, crown, or wherever you notice weakness. Then gently massage the scalp for about 3 to 5 minutes. That massage matters more than most people realize. You are not just spreading oil, you are mechanically helping increase circulation to the scalp. You're loosening tension, you're improving movement in the tissue. And for many people, scalp tension is an overlooked part of poor follicle support. After letting the rosemary oil sit for about 30 minutes to 1 hour, you can then apply fermented rice water as a scalp rinse or light treatment. Some people prefer to use rice water first and rosemary oil on a separate day, and that's also fine. If your scalp is sensitive, alternating them may actually work better. If you use the rice water after shampooing, spray or pour it onto the scalp and roots. Let it sit for 10 to 20 minutes. Then rinse lightly or leave a small amount, depending on how your scalp responds. If your hair becomes stiff or protein heavy, reduce how often you use it. That's another big mistake people make. They assume if something is natural, daily use must be better. Not necessarily. For most people, 2 to 3 times per week is more than enough. You want to support the scalp, not overload it. Now let's talk about who may benefit the most from this. This kind of routine may be especially useful for people with early thinning, seasonal shedding, postpartum recovery, once the body is stabilizing, stress-related shedding, dull scalp health, weak, breakage-prone strands, or hair that seems stuck at the same length for months. It may also be useful for people whose scalp feels congested, meaning there's too much oil, buildup, dead skin, and poor scalp turnover. Because when follicles are sitting in an unhealthy scalp environment, they don't function as well. But there's something important you need to understand. If you are severely deficient in nutrients, extremely stressed, dealing with thyroid imbalance, hormonal shifts, insulin resistance, poor sleep, or chronic inflammation, no topical remedy alone will completely solve the problem. You can support the scalp from the outside, but real hair health is also built from the inside. Hair follicles are among the fastest dividing cells in the body. That means they're sensitive to nutritional gaps. If you're low in protein, iron, zinc, biotin related cofactors, vitamin D, or other key nutrients, your body may not prioritize hair growth. It will prioritize survival first. And this is why some people say, I tried everything on my scalp and nothing worked. The problem may not be the scalp alone. It may be the whole metabolic environment. If your blood sugar is unstable, your stress hormones are high, and your diet is low in nutrients, the follicle may remain under pressure no matter how good your oil is. So if you really want stronger, thicker looking hair, think of this fermented rice water and rosemary routine as one piece of a bigger strategy. Support circulation, lower inflammation, nourish the scalp, improve protein intake, reduce ultra-processed foods, get enough sleep, stabilize stress. That's when the scalp starts behaving differently. Now, let me also mention one thing people often ignore: the microbiome of the scalp. Your scalp is not just skin with hair poking out of it. It has its own ecosystem. If that ecosystem becomes imbalanced, you can get irritation, flaking, excess oil, and poor follicle performance. Fermented ingredients are interesting partly because they may help support a healthier scalp environment when used correctly. Not aggressively, not excessively, correctly. That's why I like the idea of using ancient remedies with a modern understanding. Gee, you don't have to choose between tradition and science. Sometimes traditional practices lasted because they were doing something useful, even if people didn't have the language to explain it at the time. And here's the bottom line: if your scalp is inflamed, stagnant, poorly nourished, or under chronic stress, your follicles may become quieter over time. Fermented rice water and rosemary oil may help create the kind of environment where those follicles can perform better again, not because it's a miracle cure, but because healthy hair almost always starts with a healthy scalp. So if you've been chasing shampoos, serums, and expensive bottles while ignoring the actual condition of your scalp, this may be your sign to simplify. Sometimes the most effective routine is not the most expensive one. It's the one that consistently improves the terrain where hair is trying to grow. And when you support the scalp the right way, you're not just treating hair, you're helping the follicle do what it was designed to do. Most people make the same mistake when they start losing hair. They focus on the hair they can see instead of the place where hair is actually made. They buy shampoos for shine, conditioners for softness, masks for smoothness, and serums for split ends, thinking they are fixing the problem. But hair itself is not alive once it comes out of the scalp. The strand you touch in the mirror is already dead protein. That means if your real goal is thicker, stronger, healthier hair growth, then your attention has to shift away from the strand and back to the scalp, because that is where the follicle lives, and the follicle is where everything begins. A hair follicle is like a tiny factory sitting under the surface of your skin. It is responsible for producing the hair shaft, pushing it upward, nourishing it, and helping it stay anchored. If that factory is working well, you tend to grow fuller, stronger hair. If that factory is stressed, inflamed, undernourished, clogged, or poorly supplied with oxygen and nutrients, the hair it produces may become thinner, weaker, slower to grow, and more likely to shed. So when people say their hair is not growing, the truth is that the scalp is often struggling long before the hair starts showing visible damage. This is why scalp health is so important and so overlooked. The scalp is not just skin with hair attached to it. It is living tissue with blood vessels, oil glands, nerve endings, collagen support, immune activity, and a microbiome. It has to stay balanced if the follicle is going to perform well. If that environment becomes irritated, inflamed, oily, flaky, tight, dry, or congested, it can interfere with the normal function of the follicle. And when the follicle is not functioning properly, the quality of your hair usually declines. One of the first signs that your scalp may be struggling is increased shedding. People often notice more hair in the shower drain, more strands on the pillow, or more hair collecting in the brush. That doesn't always mean permanent hair loss, but it does mean the follicle cycle may be under stress. Hair grows in cycles. Some hairs are actively growing, some are resting, and some are naturally shedding. But when the scalp environment is unhealthy, more hairs can shift into the shedding phase earlier than they should. This can make the hair look thinner overall, especially around the crown, temples, or part line. Another sign of poor scalp health is when the hair starts feeling weak or fragile, even if you are using good products. If your strands are becoming finer, flatter, easier to break, or less dense over time, the issue may not be the conditioner or styling routine. It may be that the follicle is producing a lower quality hair strand because the sky, LP, is under stress. In other words, the strand is only as good as the environment it came from. A lot of people also ignore symptoms like itching, tenderness, tightness, flaking, excess oil, or buildup because they think these are just cosmetic annoyances. But these can be important clues. A scalp that constantly feels itchy or irritated is often a scalp that is inflamed. A scalp that gets greasy very quickly may be overproducing oil because it is out of balance. A scalp with a lot of flakes or residue may have poor turnover, congestion, or irritation that can affect how healthy the follicles stay over time. And here is where the conversation gets deeper. Hair follicles need a steady supply of nutrients and oxygen. That supply comes through blood flow. If circulation to the scalp is poor, follicles may not receive what they need efficiently. Think of it like trying to grow a plant in soil that is dry and compacted. Even if the seed is still alive, it may struggle to thrive. The same is true with the scalp. If the tissue is tight, tense, inflamed, or poorly nourished, the follicle may become sluggish. This is one reason stress can have such a visible effect on hair. Stress is not just emotional. It creates real physical changes in the body. It can increase inflammation, affect hormones, disturb sleep, tighten muscles, and alter circulation. When people go through a period of chronic stress, they often notice more shedding a few weeks or months later. That is not a coincidence. The follicle is very sensitive to internal shifts, and the scalp often reflects what is happening in the rest of the body. There is also the issue of scalp tension, which many people never think about. If you hold a lot of tension in your forehead, temples, jaw, or scalp muscles, it can reduce softness and mobility in the tissue. Over time, this may affect how well the scalp is supplied and how healthy the environment feels. That is why something as simple as regular scalp massage can sometimes make a difference. It is not because massage is magical. It is because circulation, movement, and tissue relaxation matter more than people realize. Another important factor is the buildup that can collect on the scalp. Hair products, dead skin cells, sweat, oil, pollution, and residue can create a heavy layer over time. This does not mean your follicles are literally suffocating in a dramatic way, but it does mean the scalp environment can become less balanced and less healthy. A congested scalp may feel dull greasy, itchy, or uncomfortable, and it can make it harder for the skin barrier to function well. Healthy follicles tend to do better in a clean, calm, balanced environment rather than one that is overloaded and irritated. What many people don't understand is that the follicle is one of the most metabolically active structures in the body. That means it is sensitive. It responds quickly to nutritional deficiencies, hormone shifts, inflammation, poor sleep, blood sugar imbalance, illness, and emotional stress. So if your scalp is not healthy, it is often not just a surface problem. It can be a signal that the whole system supporting the follicle is under strain. This is why chasing hair-only solutions often leads to disappointment. You can smooth the strand, you can coat the strand, you can temporarily make it shinier or softer. But if the scalp remains inflamed, tense, poorly nourished, or imbalanced, the follicle will continue to produce weaker results. That is why some people spend years buying expensive hair products and still feel like their hair is getting thinner. They are treating the symptom instead of the source. A healthy scalp supports better follicle performance in several ways. First, it helps maintain a balanced skin barrier which protects the follicle from unnecessary irritation. Second, it helps regulate oil production, which can reduce congestion and discomfort. Third, it supports circulation, which helps deliver oxygen and nutrients where they are needed. Fourth, it creates a cleaner and calmer environment where follicles are less likely to stay in a chronically stressed state. When the scalp becomes healthier, the changes in hair may not happen overnight, but they often become noticeable over time. People may begin to notice less itching, less flaking, less tightness, and less excess oil. Then they may start seeing less shedding in the shower, stronger baby hairs around the hairline, or strands that feel thicker and more resilient. These are not always dramatic changes at first, but they often indicate that the follicle environment is improving, and this is where patience becomes important. Hair grows slowly. On average, scalp hair grows only about half an inch per month, sometimes less, depending on health, age, stress, hormones, and genetics. So even if you improve the scalp today, the visible results take time to show up. That is why consistency matters so much more than intensity. Gentle, repeated support for the scalp usually works better than aggressive treatments that irritate it. A lot of people also damage the scalp without realizing it. Tight hairstyles, harsh chemicals, overwashing, excessive heat, scratching, heavy product layering, and aggressive brushing can all contribute to scalp stress over time. Even healthy routines can backfire if they are too harsh or too frequent. A scalp does not need to be attacked to become healthy. It needs to be supported. The goal is not to create the perfect beauty routine. The goal is to create a better environment for the follicle. That means thinking about the scalp as living tissue that needs nourishment, calmness, circulation, and balance. It means paying attention to the early warning signs instead of waiting until the hair becomes visibly thin. It means understanding that every strand coming out of your scalp is a reflection of what happened below the surface weeks or months earlier. So if your hair has been shedding more, growing slower, feeling thinner, or losing its former strength, it may not be a problem at all. It may be a scalp problem first. And once you start looking at hair growth from that perspective, everything changes. You stop obsessing over the strand and start supporting the source, because real hair improvement almost always begins where the follicle lives, and the follicle lives in the scalp. One of the biggest reasons natural hair remedies fail is because people usually depend on only one ingredient and expect it to solve every hair problem by itself. But the scalp is more complex than that. Hair thinning, shedding, weak strands, and slow growth usually do not come from just one issue. Sometimes the scalp is inflamed. Sometimes circulation is poor. Sometimes the follicles are sluggish. Sometimes the hair shaft is weak and breaking. Sometimes there is buildup, imbalance, or chronic stress affecting the scalp environment. That is why the most useful natural remedies are often combinations that work in different ways at the same time. And this is exactly why fermented rice water and rosemary oil have become such a powerful natural duo. These two ingredients are very different from each other, and that is what makes them interesting together. Fermented rice water is more about nourishment, conditioning, and creating a better surface environment for the scalp and hair. Rosemary oil is more about stimulation, circulation, and helping wake up a sluggish scalp. One supports and strengthens. The other energizes and activates. When used correctly, they complement each other instead of competing with each other. Let's start with fermented rice water, because this remedy has been used for generations in traditional beauty practices. At its simplest level, rice water is the starchy liquid left behind after soaking or boiling rice, but when that liquid is allowed to ferment for a short period of time, it changes. Fermentation breaks compounds down into forms that may be more beneficial to the scalp and hair. It also creates a more active liquid that many people find more effective than plain rice water. One reason fermented rice water gets so much attention is because it contains amino acids. Hair is made mostly of keratin, which is a protein. Amino acids are the building blocks of protein. So applying something rich in these compounds may help support the condition of the hair shaft and the surface of the scalp. This does not mean fermented rice water can magically regrow hair overnight, but it may help create a healthier environment where the hair feels stronger, smoother, and less fragile. That matters more than people think. A lot of what people call hair loss is actually a combination of shedding and breakage. The hair may not always be falling out from the root. Sometimes it is snapping, splitting, or weakening because the strand itself is not resilient. Fermented rice water may help improve the feel and structure of the hair, which can make it appear fuller and healthier over time. Another reason people use fermented rice water is because of inositol, a carbohydrate compound often discussed in hair care because it may help support hair resilience and improve the overall condition of damaged strands. This is especially useful for people whose hair feels dry, rough, overprocessed, or fragile. When the hair shaft is more supported, it tends to break less easily, And that can make a major difference in how thick and healthy the hair appears. But fermented rice water is not just about the strand. It may also help support the scalp itself. A healthier scalp surface often means less irritation, less roughness, and a better environment for the follicles. Since hair follicles live beneath the scalp, anything that improves the condition of the scalp can indirectly help support better follicle function. Now, let's talk about rosemary oil, because this is where the awakening part of the conversation really begins. Rosemary oil is one of the most talked about natural oils for hair growth for a reason. It is often used because it may help improve blood flow and circulation to the scalp. This is a big deal because follicles need oxygen and nutrients to function properly. If circulation is poor, follicles can become less active over time. They may still be there, but they may be producing thinner, weaker, slower growing hair. Think of the follicle like a small engine. If the engine is not getting enough fuel or support, it does not perform well. Rosemary oil may help energize that environment by increasing circulation and helping. The scalp feels more stimulated and active. This is one reason people often describe rosemary oil as helping wake up the scalp. And that phrase actually makes sense when you think about it. Many people with thinning hair do not have completely dead follicles. They often have follicles that are underperforming. The follicle may still be alive, but it may be stuck in a sluggish, stressed, or shortened growth cycle. Rosemary oil may help support a better environment for those follicles to perform more effectively. Rosemary oil is also useful because it may help calm scalp inflammation. This is another major piece of the puzzle. A scalp that is constantly irritated, oily, itchy, flaky, or uncomfortable is often not an ideal place for strong hair growth. Chronic inflammation can interfere with the normal function of the follicle and contribute to thinning over time. By helping soothe and rebalance the scalp, rosemary oil may support healthier conditions for growth. And then there is the stress factor. Many people do not realize how much stress affects the scalp. Stress can tighten tissue, disturb circulation, increase inflammation, alter hormones, and push more hairs into the shedding phase. Rosemary has long been associated with stimulation and refreshment. And while it is not a cure for stress, using rosemary oil in a scalp massage routine may help support relaxation and circulation at the same time. That creates a double benefit. So now you can start to see why these two ingredients work so well together. Fermented rice water supports the outer environment of the scalp and the condition of the hair shaft. Rosemary oil supports the deeper environment by helping circulation and reducing stagnation. One helps nourish and strengthen. The other helps stimulate and activate. One is more softening and balancing. The other is more energizing and invigorating. That balance is important because many scalp treatments fail when they are too one-sided. Some remedies are only stimulating, which can be too harsh for sensitive scalps. Others are only conditioning, which may help the strand but not do much for follicle activity. But when you combine a nourishing treatment with a stimulating treatment, you create a more complete scalp support strategy. This is why so many people notice better results when they use these ingredients consistently over time instead of randomly. It is not that one application transforms the scalp. It is that repeated support helps improve the overall scalp environment, little by little. Less irritation, better circulation, less breakage, better strand strength, more supportive conditions for the follicle. Now let's talk about the word awakening, because it sounds dramatic, but there is a practical meaning behind it. Follicle awakening does not mean a miracle. It does not mean every bald spot suddenly fills in overnight. It means helping sluggish, stressed, or underperforming follicles function more effectively by improving the conditions around them. It is about creating the kind of environment where the follicle has a better chance of doing its job. That is why consistency matters more than intensity. A lot of people try natural remedies once or twice and then decide they do not work. But hair grows slowly and follicles operate on cycles. Some hairs are growing, some are resting, and some are shedding at any given time. If you want to influence that process, you need regular support, not occasional effort. Another important point is that these ingredients work best when used correctly. Fermented rice water should not be overly sour or harsh, because too much fermentation can irritate the scalp. You want it mildly fermented, not aggressively acidic. Rosemary oil should also never be poured directly onto the cilice. Kelp in strong, undiluted amounts. Essential oils are powerful, and too much can create irritation, redness, or even more shedding in some people. That is why rosemary oil should be diluted in a carrier oil such as coconut oil, jojoba oil, olive oil, or castor oil. This makes it gentler, safer, and easier to spread through the scalp. Once diluted, it can be massaged into thinning areas, edges, the crown, or wherever support is needed. That massage itself is part of the benefit. When you massage the scalp with rosemary oil, you are not just applying a product. You are physically helping increase blood flow, soften tight tissue, and improve movement in the scalp. Then, when you use fermented rice water as a rinse or treatment, you are helping support the scalp surface and the strength of the strand. Together, that becomes a very practical and powerful routine. This combination may be especially useful for people with stress-related shedding, dull scalp health, weak breakage-prone hair, slow growth, early thinning, postpartum shedding once recovery is stabilizing, or hair that seems stuck at the same length for months. It may also help people who feel like their scalp is tired, congested, or out of balance. And perhaps the biggest reason this duo stands out is because it respects how hair actually works. Hair growth is not just about one miracle ingredient. It is about creating better conditions for the follicle over time. When you strengthen the strand while also supporting circulation and scalp balance, you are addressing both the visible and invisible parts of the hair growth process. That is what makes fermented rice water and rosemary oil more than just a trend. It makes them a natural partnership that works on multiple levels of scalp and hair support. One of the biggest reasons people get disappointed with natural hair remedies is because they expect fast result. THEs from a slow biological process They try something for a few days, maybe a week or two, and when they don't see dramatic regrowth in the mirror, they assume it doesn't work. But hair does not respond on an overnight schedule. Hair follicles work in cycles, and those cycles are influenced by your scalp health, hormones, stress levels, sleep quality, nutrition, circulation, inflammation, and overall metabolic health. That means no matter how powerful a natural remedy looks online, it will not do much if you are inconsistent with it or if your internal health is working against your follicles every single day. This is the part most people don't want to hear because it is much easier to believe that one oil, one serum, or one trendy treatment will solve the problem. But real hair support usually comes from repetition, routine, and fixing what is interfering with the follicle from the inside. Natural remedies like fermented rice water and rosemary oil can absolutely support the scalp and create a better environment for growth, but they work best when they are part of a bigger strategy. They are helpers, not miracles. Hair follicles are among the fastest dividing structures in the body. That sounds impressive, but it also means they are extremely sensitive. If your body is under stress, undernourished, inflamed, sleep deprived, or hormonally imbalanced, your hair is often one of the first places where that stress starts to show. The body will always prioritize survival over cosmetic growth. So if your system is running low on nutrients or under too much internal pressure, your follicles may not get the support they need to produce thick, healthy strands. This is why consistency matters so much. When you apply something helpful to the scalp, once in a while it may feel nice, but it usually won't change much. Follicles need a steady, supportive environment over time. T. Scalp needs regular care, not random attention. If you use a helpful routine for 3 days and then stop for 2 weeks, then start again for 1 day, then forget about it for another 10 days, you are not giving your follicles the kind of consistency they need to respond. Think of it like watering a plant. You would not expect a dry, struggling plant to recover because you poured water on it once and then ignored it for the rest of the month. It needs repeated care. The same is true with the scalp. If you want healthier follicles, less shedding, and stronger growth, you need to create the right conditions repeatedly and patiently. This is especially important because visible hair is delayed. What you see in the mirror today reflects what was happening in your scalp and body weeks or even months ago. That means if you start a healthy scalp routine today, the result is not going to show up tomorrow morning. Hair grows slowly and follicles take time to shift back into stronger growth patterns. This is why so many people quit too early. They are looking for instant visual proof from a process that naturally takes time. Now let's talk about internal health, because this is the hidden factor behind so many cases of poor hair growth. You can have the best scalp routine in the world, but if your body is lacking the raw materials needed to build strong hair, the follicle may still struggle. Hair is made mostly of protein. So one of the first questions to ask is whether you are getting enough quality protein in your diet. Many people trying to improve their hair are actually under-eating protein without realizing it. If your body is not getting enough amino acids, it has fewer building blocks available for keratin production. And it is not just protein. Hair growth can also be affected by iron status, zinc, vitamin D, B vitamins, essential fatty acids, and other nutri. 9 key cofactors involved in cell growth and tissue repair. If you are deficient or borderline low in key nutrients, your follicles may produce thinner, weaker hair or shift into more shedding. This is one reason people sometimes say their hair suddenly changed after dieting, illness, stress, or poor eating habits. The follicle is often reacting to what the body has or does not have available. Blood sugar balance is another major piece of the puzzle that often gets ignored. If your blood sugar is constantly spiking and crashing, it can contribute to inflammation, hormonal disruption, and stress signaling in the body. Over time, that can create a less supportive environment for hair growth. Stable blood sugar helps support more stable energy, less inflammation, and better metabolic function overall, which indirectly benefits the follicle. Then there is stress, which may be one of the most underestimated causes of hair shedding. Stress affects almost every system involved in hair health. It can increase cortisol, disturb sleep, tighten muscles, reduce circulation, alter hormone balance, and shift hairs into the resting or shedding phase. This is why people often notice increased hair fall after emotionally intense periods, burnout, poor sleep, grief, or long-term anxiety. The follicle is very sensitive to stress signals, and when stress becomes chronic, the scalp often reflects it. Sleep is also far more important than most people realize. Your body repairs and regulates itself during sleep. Hormones rebalance. Tissue recovery happens. Inflammation is managed, and growth-supporting processes are maintained. If your sleep is poor, short, inconsistent, or interrupted, it can absolutely affect your hair over time. People often search for external hair fixes while ignoring the fact that their body is trying to run on poor recovery every night. Jaw factor hair follicles respond strongly to hormonal shifts, which is why people often notice changes during postpartum recovery, perimenopause, menopause, thyroid dysfunction, high stress, or insulin-related imbalances. In these situations, the follicle is not just reacting to the scalp surface. It is reacting to internal signals. That means even the best natural routine may only help partially unless the deeper hormonal environment is also supported. This is where many people get confused. They use a good scalp remedy and maybe notice some improvement, but not enough. Then they think the remedy failed. But often, the remedy is doing its part. It is just not enough on its own to overpower a deeper issue. If the scalp is being supported from the outside, but the body is sending stress, deficiency, or inflammation signals from the inside, the follicle receives mixed messages. That is why long-term hair support works best when external care and internal care are combined. External care includes things like scalp massage, reducing buildup, improving circulation, using supportive ingredients, and keeping the scalp environment balanced. Internal care includes nutrition, protein intake, blood sugar balance, stress management, sleep, inflammation control, and paying attention to any underlying hormonal or metabolic factors. And there is another very important truth here. Sometimes people unintentionally sabotage their own progress by doing too much. They start a new routine and then pile on 6 other treatments at the same time. They scrub the scalp too hard, apply too many oils, use too many products, switch routines every week, and end up irritating the scalp more than helping it. Consistency does not mean intensity. It means doing the right things regularly and gently enough that the scalp can actually respond well. A healthy scalp usually likes rhythm more than chaos. Regular cleansing without stripping, regular support without overload, regular massage without aggression, regular nourishment without obsession. When you create that kind of steady environment, the follicle has a better chance to stabilize. This is also why tracking progress realistically matters. This is also why tracking progress realistically matters. Hair growth is not always dramatic at first. The earliest signs of improvement may be less itching, less flaking, less oil imbalance, less tenderness, less shedding in the shower, or a scalp that simply feels calmer and healthier. Those are meaningful signs. They suggest the environment is shifting in the right direction, even before major visible length or density changes happen. Then, over time, some people begin noticing finer, new hairs around the hairline, improved texture, stronger roots, or less breakage. These are usually gradual changes, not overnight transformations. And that is exactly how healthy hair progress tends to work in real life. The people who usually see the best long-term improvement are not the ones constantly chasing a miracle. They are the ones who commit to giving their scalp and body what they need consistently enough for the follicles to respond. They understand that natural remedies are not fake, but they are also not instant. They work best when the scalp is supported from the outside and the body is supported from the inside at the same time. So if someone is using fermented rice water, rosemary oil, or any other scalp supporting treatment, the real question is not just, what am I putting on my hair? The better question is, am I creating the kind of internal and external and environment where my follicles can actually thrive? Because healthy hair is usually not built by one product, one wash day, or one viral trick. It is built by repetition, patience, nourishment, balance, and a routine tea. Hat supports the follicle from every angle.